All right. Welcome, everybody. Today, we're going to learn about a career in theater. And we have Bag and Baggage, and Cassie Greer is the one who's going to tell us about it. But before that, let's do a little housekeeping. Make sure, as you know, we have to do a check-in so that the teachers knows that you are here at this event. And then we have a great question document if you know a question but doesn't really know how to formulate it, you can look at the great question document. And the most important thing is the evaluation form. You have to do it right after the event so that everything that you learn, everything that you um, like any knowledge that you learn is easier to remember. And the evaluation form also is the one that will let us know that how to give you the grade, and it's a requirement for you to graduate, especially that it's for the high school students. So, and with that, let's have Cassie do this share.
Amazing. Hi, friends. Thank you so much for spending some time with me this afternoon. I'm not wearing a fur sash. This is my cat, Gwen, who you may see all over the screen. So I hope you all are doing well. I also want to be clear, just as we are getting going, that I'm not a huge fan of like when I'm in a classroom setting and the teacher is just talking at me. That feels like not always super useful. So I bring this up because if there are any moments in time where you have a question, where you want to know something, please put it in the chat. I will be sharing my screen with a PowerPoint, but I'm going to get the chat open. And if there's like anything at all, this is a conversation, and this is a time for you to get as many of your questions as possible answered, to sort of explore if this is something that you want to end up actually doing with your life. Which feels like a big, huge, overwhelming question sometimes. So take advantage of this opportunity and use it for yourself. And please use me for whatever information I can give you. I am not by any means an expert, or do I have all of the answers, but I do this full time for my career. So I'm going to start by screen sharing, I think, and then I'll probably back and forth. But I have a lovely PowerPoint because I love PowerPoint presentations. So we're going to talk about careers in the theater. So my name is Cassie Greer. I use she, her pronouns. I am the artistic director at Bag and Baggage Productions, which is a theater company in Hillsborough, downtown Hillsborough. Some of you may have been there before. If you haven't, I know COVID is a weird time period, but we do have a program for high school students where if you show your student ID at the door and there are tickets left for the performance, you can get in for free. So if you are a theater lover, you could see theater for free at Bag and Baggage. I have a couple photos of myself on stage. So you can just see that I am legitimately an actor. I do have experience doing this in a whole variety of ways. I received my MFA in acting from Florida Atlantic University. So that is what my formal education and training has been in. And then I've also directed a whole bunch of shows. Here's just some images of shows that I've directed in the past few years. Again, it feels really weird to be talking to you all about theater right now because we're living in this pandemic where we can't actually do theater in the ways that it is sort of intended to be done. So I realized that, like, you know, these are recent shows and they're all like 2 years old now. And we're in a field that is changing and that is profoundly impacted by the world that we are living in. So I want to sort of honor and acknowledge that reality as we get going here. So first, the big question, why theater? Why do we do this? And I'm going to stop screen sharing because as part of this question, I am curious to know from you why you do theater, what you are interested in specifically. You know, do you want to be an actor? Do you want to be a lighting designer? Do you want to be making blockbuster movies in LA? You know, what is it that you want? And I'm going to ask you those questions. So why do you do theater? What do you want out of your career as you are assessing it right now? just as an opportunity for me to know sort of who's in this room. So thank you, Tyler Bonds, for putting it in the chat. Please drop things in the chat, or if you want to speak voice into the room, use that little raise hand feature and I will call on you and you can unmute yourself and chat. But I am going to lift up what is in the chat. So Tyler says, I've never done theater. I'm terrified of being on stage. I was curious about this. Tyler, can I just tell you that I have always loved the idea of theater, and the first several times I was on stage was also terrified. And there is nothing to do but practice, and it gets so much better. Alexis does tech theater with the fear of being on stage. I feel the fear, friends. Abby Wallace wants to be an actor, loves performing and always have loved being creative with performing, amazing. Hank Smith, enjoy the environment and the people are so welcoming. So true. Theater is like such a unique space to be in. Emma says, real life is pale in comparison. It is true. Chase wants to be an actor, but never done a play or a musical, just the production behind it, which is really useful to get an idea of what all goes into this whole thing. Great. Kennedy, you get to do things you could never do in real life. This is so true. Exploring all kinds of things. Social anxiety gets in the way. Yes. You must you never know, Tyler. You might go into theater. Stranger things have happened. Aiden, oh hi Aiden, wants to be an actor, loves telling stories and talking about and taking people, I can read, friends, and taking people out of whatever they are going through at the moment. Yeah, man, especially I think in the world we're living in right now, theater and storytelling can be such a great escape. Costumes and makeup, amazing. I want to be an actor. Has been a dream of yours. Awesome, Natalie. You've done a musical before and it was really fun. Great. And never acted, but want to be a lighting designer or a master electrician. Amazing. And Gabriel, enjoy the connection to people and the amount I can express on stage. Truth. Milo, I've been doing theater and tech theater since middle school. Amazing. Want to pursue being an actor. Sweet. Ooh, that's exciting. I hope that is all going well. Okay. Thank you, friends. Please continue to use the chat. Voice acting. Yes, it's amazing. Super, like this, it's like exploding right now, like nothing else. Okay, yes, keep using the chat. I'm gonna go back to the PowerPoint. If you put something in the chat that you really want me to address and I don't, unmute yourself and yell at me, pretty please. Okay, I'm gonna get my screen in order here, play this PowerPoint, pull up my chat. What did we do before Zoom, my friends? I don't even know. Okay. So let us get rolling on how we have careers in the theater. How is it that I get to do this with my life every single day? The first question I will pose to you, which I sort of already did by asking you, what you wanted to do, what your goals were, why you're in this room, this virtual room today, is this question, do I want to work as an artist or do I want to work as an administrator? And believe it or not, theater can employ both types of people. I am an artist. I showed you those pictures of the art that I have done. And in my current position, I am also an administrator, which means that I am part of the team that creates the space for theater to happen behind the scenes in a way that usually doesn't have much to do with being an artist, but I do both. So here's a little chart of what it's called an organizational chart, what a theater company looks like. You'll notice up here at top there is a board of directors. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment, but that is because most theater companies in the United States, unless you are on Broadway, are nonprofit organizations, nonprofit arts organizations, which exist in service of the community that they are a part of. So a board of directors is a collection of people from the community that helps to oversee the company and make sure that it is being true to its mission and staying responsible with its money and all of that. So underneath that, you'll see artistic director, that's me, that's what I do, and an executive director. And at Bag and Baggage, we don't have an executive director, we have a managing director that essentially does that role. And we are the co-leaders of our organization. So I'm gonna put a couple boxes up here. So everything in the yellow box is stuff that would fall under the having a career as an artist. So things like, the resident designers and the costume shop and the electricians and all of that. And then everything in that sort of turquoise box is what it's like to have a career as an arts administrator. So business manager, marketing, box office, promotions, payroll, all of this stuff is required for theater to be able to happen. So if you want a career in the theater, you can have a career, you can do any of these jobs, which is kind of awesome. So because I think most of us, I would tell you, we're a very small staff at Bag and Baggage. There are 7 of us, and all 7 of us, our first interest in theater came through the art, and we all now have full-time jobs in administration. So I'm going to talk about administration first because I feel like it's usually the second thought, and then we'll talk about being an artist. So first, what does an arts administrator do? So I showed you some of those jobs, some of those positions that you can hold as an arts administrator. But specifically, arts administrators are people who have an interest in the arts plus business experience and fundraising skills. So really, as much as I wish that we could just get together and do plays and put them on and have an audience, without somebody coordinating all of the details behind the scenes and doing publicity so that people will actually come to the show and, raising the funds so you can get paid to do this and writing your check and all of that, without people who are managing the business and the fundraising, the art cannot really happen. These are also people who work in arts administration who manage the business operations, right? So who are helping put all of these pieces together to oversee, to make sure the machinery of a theater company is working together in the best way possible. Arts administrators are people who manage and promote the activities, right? So that's like the publicity, but they interact with artists and other performers, with patrons and supporters, and with the whole staff. Our marketing and communications associate is constantly chatting with our staff about where are there gaps in our outreach? How many tickets have we sold? Where do we need to sort of be pushing our publicity efforts? And then they're also talking to the performers saying, hey, can you make a little video for me to throw on TikTok? Or can you answer some questions that I can put up on our website? Arts administrators also, and this is the part I'm going to get back to about being a nonprofit organization, they raise funds. And in the nonprofit world, fundraising is called development. So the arts administrators who work in development are having conversations with individual donors, they're overseeing big fundraising events, and they are writing grants. So because theater companies are nonprofits, part of what this means is that when we sell tickets to a show, the amount of income that comes with our ticket sales is nowhere near enough money to cover all of the expense of putting on a theater production. And that is why we are constantly fundraising, because we are not making a profit off anything that we're doing. We're just trying to get enough resources to cover the costs of employing people in a creative field, which is challenging. And we live in a country where that is more challenging than in some other countries. So this is why arts administrators are so important, and we could not do any of the art without them. So what kind of skills do you need to be an arts administrator? There are many jobs, many different ways that you can support the system of making theater. Financial oversight, right? This is a big one. Being able to keep track of money and distribute it in the ways that it is needed to set construction pieces, and to your stage manager, and to the actors, and to the designers. Marketing and sales and customer service, really great people working in the box office, working to be in communication with patrons, to be in communication with newspapers, to get stories, other news organizations, social media, all of that. Again, public relations, interfacing with the press in a more sort of formal way. It's really interesting right now, not even just in the theater, but with everything in our world, right? These sort of old traditional forms of media are getting phased out in favor of digital media and social media. And so people who are being really thoughtful about how to manage that are really useful to arts organizations and theaters. The skills of communication and negotiation. As you can imagine, there are a lot of people from a lot of different places of stakeholding coming together when putting on a theatrical production, and being able to navigate those relationships and to manage the way that we are all working together as a team is hugely, hugely important skill to have. Project management and planning. Putting up a show is essentially just one big project with a whole bunch of moving parts. So being able to see the big picture, not just getting stuck in your particular role in the production, is a huge asset for arts administrators to have. Legal and contracting. We work constantly with a whole bunch of different artists, which means we have a whole bunch of different employees coming in and out, which means they all need different contracts on very short terms. And being aware of the language surrounding that and how we can respect all workers is really important, especially in something that is more of like a non-traditional work environment like a theater. Networking. This is not the first time I will say this word in our little hour and a half together here. Who you know is hugely important, and how you connect and build relationships. This is something that I think people in any career would tell you, that building relationships is a huge part of how you are able to have success in your career. And it is super true in the theater, and it is super true in what makes a successful arts administrator. Are you connecting with the community? Are you connecting with other organizations so you can help bolster each other's work? Do you have a strong network of resources? If you don't know the answer to like a human resources question, do you know somebody who works in HR that you can go to for some, to bounce the idea off of, or to get some critical feedback? Hugely important skill to have in arts admin. And lastly, delegation and management. As I have already said, there are a ton of moving pieces in a theatrical production. Being able to see that big picture and think about what needs to be done and when, and who should be doing which tasks, and being able to be responsible for managing that is incredibly important. So those are some great skills that you can have if you want to be an arts admin. How do you get there? What do you need to do? Let's say you're going to graduate high school this year and you're like, this is sounding kind of cool, Cassie. I might want to work in arts administration. How do you get there? Studying, right? So if you want to get a specific degree, they offer bachelor's and master's in arts administration in certain programs. This is a thing that exists, and they will tell you all about how like nonprofits work, all about how you manage all of the things that I was just talking about. You can also specifically study, or I guess it's more broad, nonprofit management. So arts organizations are sort of a subset of nonprofits, and the whole nonprofit structure in general is really specific. The concept of having a board of directors that sort of sits at the top of that chart is just one very specific characteristic of nonprofits. But knowing how they work is super helpful. Studying development, fundraising, best practices, grant writing. There are these foundations out there that collect funds, collect money, resources from a whole bunch of different people, and then decide to give them to companies like mine. And the way that they do that is through a process where we write a grant. We do a proposal. We say, we would like you to give us $10,000 to do this production, to pay for this specific thing. And these are all of the reasons we think that this is an important project to do. And these are all of the ways that we're going to be thoughtful and responsible about utilizing this money. And so we write up this whole thing and we send it off to the foundation, and they review it, and hopefully they give us that $10,000. But it's a whole process that it's super useful to know about if you want to be working in arts administration. Public relations and communication. Theater doesn't exist without an audience. And if you don't know how to get in touch with an audience, you're kind of screwed. So knowing how to communicate, knowing how to work, press. This is similar to the advertising and marketing, but that can also be more like visually, right? How do you create a compelling show poster that's going to make people stop on the street and be like, oh my God, what's that? I totally want to see that play. How you interact with the community is huge. And then accounting and bookkeeping, right? How you keep track of the finances. How do you learn how to do that efficiently and effectively. So studying any of these things can set you up really solidly for a career in arts administration. The other thing that I would say, as far as how do you get there, is internships. Getting real hands-on, on the job, on the ground experience in the administrative offices of theater companies. There is no substitute for that. You can be in the middle of the action and see how all of these pieces work together. You can intern with foundations, those places that I was talking about that have collections of cash that decide to give them out to nonprofit organizations. That's really useful because you get an inside scoop on what funders look for and what is really compelling when they're thinking about how they want to direct resources one way or another. Also, interning at any nonprofit organization, because all nonprofits share similarities with the ways that we work and the structures that we have to operate within. So all of these can be really useful things for you to do and to consider if you are thinking about having a career in arts administration. So I'm going to pause because that was a whole bunch of information. I will also say that I'm super happy to share this slide deck. So I don't know, chamber friends, if it's possible to send that out after the fact as a follow-up so people can have this. I'm seeing yes, thanks, Kat. So we can totally do that. But any questions about arts administration, either pop them in the chat, raise your hand, just unmute yourself. I will give this a few minutes. Great. Gonna keep rolling, but if you have any questions, throw them in the chat. So let's talk about being an artist. How does this work? Being an artist is really unique in terms of a career because you are your own boss and you are your own product. Do I prefer being an admin or an artist? Oh, my job right now, I get to do both. And I don't think I could imagine just doing one or the other. So that is a cop-out of an answer. But there are some really, being an administrator appeals to the part of my brain that really loved like math and like putting things in order. And being an artist appeals to the whole other side of my brain that loves creating and collaborating and building new things out of nothing. And the fact that I get to do both of them is really, really exciting. So when I am in artist mode, I am my own boss and I am my own product, right? I am, especially when I'm trying to be an actor, like very physically, like this, I am my product. So when I'm my own boss, what that means is that I'm managing my own scheduling. I'm needing to be disciplined about like what I do and when I do it, and being really thoughtful about how I manage my time and my resources. Think about everything that a boss in any other position would do. I need to do that for myself because no one else is going to do it for me. Now, it can be true that, you know, if you live in LA and if you've like gotten to a certain level, you can employ somebody called a manager that will do most of this business for you. But that is not most of the actors that live in the United States. Most of us are being our own boss. And when you're your own product, specifically when you're an actor, but really, you know, you could be a designer as well. You need to be responsible for managing your skills, making sure they are up to speed, they are top notch. And to do that, making sure that you're constantly thinking about training. Someone mentioned being a lighting designer or a master electrician. That technology is changing and developing so fast. I learned lighting design when I was in college 15 or 20 years ago, and it's a totally different game now. So making sure you're staying up on your training. As an actor, you know, if you think about any other performing artists, musicians are practicing all of the time. And sometimes as actors, we're like, okay, great, we can just like get up and go. But if we're not continuing to sort of hone our instrument, we're not in top shape for being able to do that. So taking care of the product that is you. And really importantly, self-care, right? Creating an environment for yourself where you can be a solid, stable human being that is able to create. our industry can be a little volatile. So making sure that like you're getting enough sleep, drinking enough water, you're in healthy relationships, you're doing what you need to do, you're exercising what you need to do so you can be performing to the best of your abilities at all points in time. And again, this is something that I suppose you could say for anyone in any career, but it becomes really, really central when you're like, you need to be on stage, to do 8 shows a week. You need to be in good shape. You need to be in good health. Living in the pandemic has like brought this to light in a whole new way. So this is where I'd start talking about being an artist. What skills do you need? A whole bunch of them. But it also totally depends on what your specific goals are. So here are some important questions to ask yourself if you want to be an artist. If you want to be an actor, do you want to work on stage or on camera or both? This is also true if you're a designer. Do you want to build things, create things, light things for the stage, for camera, or both? This is an important question because they are different skill sets, different yet related, but distinct. Is the quality or the quantity of work more important to you? And what I mean by that is some actors have really prolific careers doing like a bunch of commercial work. And that is a great quantity of work. But the quality of commercial work, like, sometimes it's stupid, you guys. I've done commercials where I have to say really stupid things. And then I feel like, oh, man, they paid me $2,000 and I said this stupid line. So sometimes like that can be like really demoralizing if that's the only work you do and if you want something greater, something more artistically fulfilling out of it. But there's also the flip side where sometimes, those big meaty roles that are like so great to dig into, they don't come around very often. So if that's going to be really like, ooh, it's really rough for me to not be working very much, I'd rather have a greater quantity of work. That's an important question for you to consider. Now, very rarely is it one end of the spectrum or the other. I've had a great fortune in my career that I've been able to do a lot of really artistically rewarding work on stage. And I've been able to supplement that with the stupid commercial that pays me $2,000 to say a silly line, or with some voiceover work here and there. So existing on that spectrum is probably what most actors do, but it's really important for you to consider that and to ask yourself that question. Where do you want to be in 20 years? Do you want to be working for Bag and Baggage Productions in Hillsboro, Oregon? Do you want to be on Broadway? Do you want to be working in a community theater in Missouri? Do you want to be in Hollywood? Where do you want to be? Because what you do now will set you on that path. Is it important to you to have a college degree? I realize that somebody telling you in a career presentation that it might not be important to have a college degree is maybe not something you usually hear. But friends, you don't need a degree to be an actor. That said, the information you will gain and the things you will learn going through an undergraduate training program are super valuable. Super, super valuable. Remember the part about being your own product and needing to be responsible for your training? That is important. So I'm not saying don't study things. I'm just saying that maybe if you're like, oh, I guess I don't need a diploma, like I could be fine with that. That is okay for the theater. No one's going to be like, oh, you're coming to audition for this show? Please show me your diploma. That's not how it works. Is it important for you to join a union? So in this presentation, I only talk about actors unions, but there are unions for crew members and designers as well. And I will very briefly touch on this, but unions essentially offer protections to their workers. Like there's like the steel workers union, things like that, right? Baseball, the players union, they're about to go on strike, or they are going on strike right now. Yeah, it's all about having a body of people who care about the work that you are doing as performers, that care enough to make sure that you are going to be protected, that you're not going to have to be in unsafe working environments, that you're not going to be paid like, $2 an hour, that you're not going to be abused essentially as a performer. Does this mean that companies or places that don't hire union performers do these abusive things? Absolutely not. Bag and Baggage does not frequently hire union performers, in part because there's much greater cost associated with that. And there are some right now really challenging regulations that have been put into place in terms of dealing with COVID safety, like daily testing, which just gets really expensive. So if it's important for you to join a union, this is good for you to know, because some cities, Portland being an example, is not a super useful place for you to live because there are not that many union jobs. So if you are a member of, we'll get to this in a moment on the next slide, Actors Equity Association or SAG-AFTRA, if you're a member of these unions, you can only work under contracts that are specifically created for union members. Many companies don't have the resources to be able to do that. That's a tangent. I'll go into it a little bit more. Otherwise, if you need to know more about it, tell me and we can go down that rabbit hole further. The other thing about things you need to consider, skills that you need, are considering like what your survival job is and how long you're okay doing it. So it can be hard to break into work in the theater or in film, whether you are a performer or a technician or a designer. So many people in this industry have that day job or survival job. I taught for a long time. I bartended for a long time. These were things that were relatively flexible, that I could build my schedule around so that I was also available to go on auditions and to do theatrical work and to do commercials. And I did that for a really long time. I did not have just one single job until I was like 34. So I was okay with that. But if you're like, that feels really unstable, which it can be, and you're not sure you want that in your life, that's an important thing to think about. Or maybe, knowing that you have like a partner who does have a stable position. That's what a lot of people in our industry do, is work it out with the people that they're living with. Looking in the chat, are artists mostly work in contract or with a company? What a great question. Artists are independent entities. So you are going to work for, you could work for Bag and Baggage, you could work for Artist Repertory Theater, you could work for Shaking the Tree. I'm naming some theaters in Portland. You could work, I did a commercial last week for a car dealership. I recorded an audiobook for an independent author a few months ago. So as an artist, I'm working under different contracts for each of these things that I do as an artistic project. It is also true that Bag and Baggage is an example of a company that has a group of resident artists that we routinely will hire, though not exclusively. They are not under a contract to be a company artist, but they just have a regular working relationship with us, and we frequently will offer contracts to them. There are definitely benefits of working with that sort of resident company structure, because you get to know each other really well as artists, and you get to go really deep into your work because there's a whole bunch of trust there. So that is great. And it can also start feeling really closed off, because the world is large, friends, and there's so many people to work with and experiences to have. So again, having the balance of working with people with whom you are really comfortable and have an existing solid working relationship is great. And it's even greater when that's balanced by these new experiences and constantly coming into contact with new people that inspire you in different ways. So I like non-answers apparently, but I like the balance of both. What else is on this slide? Yes, this very important thing. Okay, so in thinking about what what skills you need to develop and what your goals are and answers to these questions, all of this will help you determine what market you need to be in. And by that, I mean, like, we're in the Portland metro market right now, and what type of training or education that you need. So let us think about markets very quickly. Here are some of the best cities for actors in general. And, like the internet is the authority on this. This is pulled from a variety of different places, plus my knowledge of our country. I've lived in 3 different regions in this country, and I have friends who are all over. So this is my impression based on Google and my personal connections of the best cities for actors. Best on-camera markets, by far Los Angeles, friends. Like if you want to be working on camera, and that is the place to be. But some of these other secondary markets are also really great and on the up and up. You can discover which markets are good for on-camera work by sometimes there will be incentives that local government will put out to incentivize production companies to come make films or TV shows in their region, because that puts a whole bunch of money into the local economy. So if you do a little bit of research to see, are there cities where, or municipalities where they have recently voted to provide incentives for television production, that can be a really good indicator, like, ooh, some jobs are going to be coming there real soon. And then here are the best on-stage markets. New York, absolutely. Hard scene to break into. There are a ton of actors in New York, but a great place to be. Chicago and Minneapolis, great Midwest cities that have tons of theater. Philadelphia as well. Not all of it pays super well, but there is a bunch of it and a really great culture for it. So there's my little tangent about markets. Training and education. Okay, so here are the things that I would invite you to consider about training and education. You can get a bachelor's degree. You can get a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree. You can get a certificate. PCPA, Pacific College of Performing Arts, offers a 2-year certificate. So this is when I said, is it important to you to have a college degree? My friend Katie went to PCPA, totally doesn't have a college degree, has a 2-year certificate. She works all of the time, all over the place, has a great career as an actor. There are also workshops that you can take. So multiple days or multiple sessions on a specific topic, or classes, ongoing training with the same group of people. With all of these things, I would invite you to consider what experience you are actually getting. And I think I'm going to put up like the rest of these things because I'm going to talk about them perhaps out of order. So just so you see where we're going completely here. What experience are you actually getting? I want to bring up the example that I went to a tiny liberal arts school in Indiana to get my undergrad degree, which is in theater. And I also have undergrad degrees in history and music because I'm bad at making decisions. But I went to this tiny liberal arts school, right? And when I got my master's degree, I went to this massive state school in Florida. And the experience that I got as an undergrad student at a tiny liberal arts school was incredible because the department was small, which meant that I got to experience everything. I got to act. I got to stage manage. I got to design lights. I got to work in the costume shop. I got to design the poster and the program. I got to be the student assistant to the technical director. I got to do everything. So I graduated college with this wealth of actual tangible hands-on experience, not just having studied it in class. I contrast that with undergrads at Florida Atlantic University, where, because they had a master's program, all of the acting roles went to the MFA acting students like me. So all of the undergrad students who were just getting their bachelor's degrees had such fewer opportunities to be on stage. All of the MFA designers were the ones designing all of the shows. So the undergraduate students had much fewer opportunities to do design work that was actually realized, right? That they actually built and used in a show. They got to do all of that in class. And the training that they got in class was great. And the number of classes offered was much broader than the number of classes offered to me in tiny little Midwest liberal arts school. But I would argue that the experience I walked away from undergrad with was I'm arguing that it was much more complete than some of the students who left that massive, huge, well-resourced program at Florida Atlantic University because there was an MFA program there. So if you're looking at college and you have decided, yeah, I do really want to go to college, I would say look and see if the college has master's students, and know that if they do, it is highly likely that a lot of the opportunities are going to be given to the MFA students and not to the undergrads. Useful to know. It is also true that because that school in Florida is so much larger, there are so many more resources there. So this is the next point. Who is teaching you? Man, teachers were so much more well-rounded, had so much more impressive resumes, had so much greater training, much better connections. So in terms of that experience was super useful. But this is in any case, if you're taking a class, who is teaching it? How well have they trained to teach you the things they're teaching you? What work have they done? Who are they connected to? Location, showcases, and audiences. So theater and getting a job in theater in part is about like how competent you are, how well you can do your job. And in part, it is about who knows you and who has seen you work. And so if you are, doing a program that's like, we've got a showcase in New York at the end, you're going to be getting in front of producers that work in the New York scene. And if that is your goal, if you want to be on Broadway, then training in a program that's like, yep, we do a showcase at the end might be something really attractive to you. If you know that you have this dream, remember the question of what do you want to be doing in 20 years? If you're like, I want to be living in Denver, Colorado, amazing. Find a college to go to in Denver because you're going to train in that environment. You're going to make connections with the people teaching you who probably have connections in the professional community who will be able to give you a leg up into working in that community. I moved to Portland having already gone to college, gone to grad school, and so I had to do the work when I moved here of making all of these connections from scratch. This is opposed to we work at Bag and Baggage with theater students from Pacific University. And for the people that want to work in the Portland metro area, they can go right from Pacific to working with us as part of this community already, and they can be building relationships throughout their college careers. So they already have that leg up if they want to be staying in this market. Another question to ask is, what have people with similar training gone on to do? Where do they work in? Are they on Broadway? Have they all stopped acting or stopped designing? Are they teachers predominantly? Are they performers? Are they fabricators? What do they do? And can you talk to people who have gone through similar programs and get a sense of what it was like and how that has given them an opportunity to get to where they are today? And with all of this, a cost-benefit analysis. This is expensive, friends. It's expensive to get training. It's expensive to go to college, unfortunately, right? And so how much are you willing to invest? How much are you willing to pay for the training that you get in a field where your ability to earn money is like all over the map, right? Their community theater exists. You can perform in a play, you can design a show for absolutely no money at all, or you can be working on Broadway where you're making $1,000 a week or more. The full gamut. So what is your risk profile there? Like how much are you willing to invest? What do you want? Can you be smart and strategic about it? And consider all of these factors. I feel like this maybe feels overwhelming. I'm feeling overwhelmed talking about it, and I do this professionally. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, I hear you. I'm also here to tell you that this is 100% possible because I have a job full-time in the theater right now. Okay, let's move forward. Unions. So this is this tiny rabbit hole that we're going to go down just because I want you to know these. So the Actors Equity Association, AEA, and the Screen Actors Guild, which merged a few years ago with the American Federation of Television and Radio Artists for this lovely combo that is SAG-AFTRA. These are the unions that argue collectively, they bargain collectively with theaters or with filmmakers. And really these exist to ensure that actors, performers, artists are protected. The Stagehands Union is called IATSE, IATSE, and there are several chapters of it depending on your region. There are also scenic designers unions. Stage managers are part of the Actors Equity Association for whatever reason, but usually there are ways of being protected. There's Stage Directors and Choreographers Association, SDC, which is the Union of Directors. So there are a bunch of these. And this is important because some actors in particular like really want to be union actors. They want that little asterisk next to their name in the program. They want to be part of Actors Equity Association. They want that protection, which is fantastic. It costs a lot of money to do that because you got to pay dues, and you have to be consistently working under a specific equity contract. So I already mentioned this, but again, in the Portland area, there are only a small handful of theaters that offer equity contracts, AEA contracts. So if you are a member of Actors Equity Association, the amount of work that you can do, that you're able to do because you are affiliated with the union, is severely limited. So your number of available jobs is like this big as opposed to this big. Useful to know. That could be totally okay with you because you're like, yep, I get it. I know there are fewer opportunities, but I want those protections. Amazing, fantastic. You may also be like I am union eligible, but have decided to not join the union because I want all the opportunities. It's a personal decision that you have to make, and there's no one right way to do it. But you do need to be aware that this is a thing. Okay, so being an artist, how do I get there? Number one, invest in training that fits your goals. So all of these questions I just asked you, training is important, right? You might not need to go to college, but you do need to manage yourself as your product. You need to invest in training. And the training that's going to be the most efficient and effective is one that keeps your personal goals in mind. There is no one right way to be a theater artist. Everybody does it differently. What do you want? What speaks to you? Where do you want to be in your life? What are those goals? And then be really smart about taking steps to move you in that direction. Network. Here's that word again. Use your training to make connections. There are so many times where I have been offered work, not because I've gone in and auditioned, but because I know people or I've worked with somebody. This summer, friends, I haven't been on stage since 2018, and I got an email saying, oh, hey, this director recommended you. We're doing a virtual project in Salem. Would you come down and play this role? Because I had a good relationship with this director. It's the easiest work I have ever gotten. Super important. Get experience. Build your resume. People want to see that you have done work. So somebody said in the chat, like, I've never done theater before. Fantastic. You have such a rich opportunity to like dive in and make some stuff. So you can work with companies, you can work with other artists, you can work with casting directors, you can produce your own work, which at this point and at the point in your careers that you all may be at is maybe the easiest and the most doable, right? I have a friend who went to Hill High and they put on a show like outdoors on the school grounds and invited people, and like a ton of people came, and it was all, they had just done it themselves. You might not get paid, right? I think they passed a hat and did a collection from Audience. So know that, but it's a really great way. Then they could put on their resume, yeah, I acted in this show, I directed in this show, I designed costumes for this show. Having experience on your resume is important. It shows people that you're serious. It shows them that you've been training to do this, that you know a little bit about what you're doing, and that you're hungry for more. You can also, on your resume, if you don't have, real life experience, put what you've done in classwork. So if you've never been in a full production, but you've worked on a scene from As You Like It in your Shakespeare acting class, you can put classwork on your resume, and you can say, I played Rosalind in scene work in my Shakespeare class in As You Like It, for example. So do not stress if you're like, I have no experience. It's fine. There are ways to get it. Community theaters are super great. Heart Theater in Hillsborough, Theater in the Grove in Forest Grove, Beaverton Civic Theater, Twilight Theater Company in Portland. These are community theaters where you don't really get, you may get paid like a small stipend, but you don't get paid very much, but you can get experience. And these are organizations where people come together because they love theater and they just want to make it happen. Build your resume. Don't be afraid to exploit your full skill set. So when I was talking about the experience that I got in undergrad, being an actor, being a stage manager, being a designer, being a technician, that's what I mean. Not being afraid to like, say, oh yeah, I can stage manage this show, or oh, do you need somebody to help stitch these costumes? If you have that within your skill set, versatility can go a long way. If you're a musician, putting that on your resume, yeah, I am proficient in the trombone. Yes, I got a Nats blue ribbon for my singing. Like use these things because people are really into being able to work with artists who are versatile. If you can design lights and props, I am about to hire a scenic designer who was like, oh, hey, I'd love to do props for this show too, because I feel like they fold in really well. She just got herself like an extra contract, right? Because she was like, this is my full skill set and I'm interested. And I was like, well, that's fantastic. Then I don't need to worry about having somebody, a props designer who's going to mesh well with you. You can just take that on and have it be part of your whole concept. So be clear about what are your skills and how can you be taking advantage of them. And here's that survival job thing. Have one that you love. Have one that you love, because otherwise you are going to resent it if you don't, and you're going to burn out. So I legitimately loved bartending. It appealed to like the things in me that are an actor, right? A lot of people, conversations, improv all the time, fast pace. I loved it. I loved teaching. I still do teach sometimes, right? Getting to talk about what it is that we do and how we can do it better and digging in and figuring things out. Most artists that work for Bag and Baggage have some kind of day job that they love. Some work for, somebody works for a marketing company, someone works in telecommunications, someone's a financial advisor, someone does voiceover full time from their home studio, which is a cool job to have. People work in the service industry, people work in coffee shops. People work as graphic designers, which is really great because then you can be like, ooh, do you need me to design some show posters or advertisements for our show? Really great way to become an asset to a company. So there's my advice for how to get there. Most importantly, don't forget to take care of yourself. You are your own product, and you are only going to be as good at, like, if you don't get a good night's sleep, generally you're going to perform more poorly. That's just like a microcosmic example, right? You're going to be your best self when you're taking care of yourself. You're going to be able to do all of these things. I mean, we work in a hard, challenging industry. So taking care of yourself so that you are able to have the stamina you need to do it, especially if you're like doing survival job and doing theater job at the same time, it's exhausting, friends. You need to take care of yourself. Okay, how do I find work? This all sounds great, Cassie. Cool, I'm on board. How do I find work? Part 1, audition postings and designer calls. So people will say, like in any other job, you can go look at LinkedIn or whatever, these ZipRecruiter, all of these things, right? You can look for postings for actors and designers. A great place to look is on theater company websites. Usually they'll have like an auditions or a work with us tab. Bag and Baggage has a thing where you can submit your headshot and resume as an actor, even if we're not specifically casting for a show at that very moment. So send something in, say, hey, I'm interested in working with you. Send me an email, send our technical director an email saying, hey, I'd love to be a props master on a show. Facebook groups. There are a ton of these in the Portland metro area. There's like Portland Actors, Portland On Stage, Actors in Portland. Start doing some poking around on Facebook. I realize I realize Facebook is not the most Gen Z friendly social media site, but it still is the place where a lot of this information is being collected. Another thing specifically to Portland is there's something called PDX Backstage, which started years and years ago as a listserv when those were a thing. Right now, I think it's a Yahoo group. And it's basically, you can subscribe to these, like, to the digest of emails. Somebody will email that whole group and you get an email and it's like, hey, seeking actors for this, here's a breakdown, here's how you submit. And I'm looking for a designer for this show, or I'm hiring crew. And this is many regions have something like that. So that's PDX Backstage. If you Google it, you can find it. It's a really great way to just start seeing what's out there in our particular region. Area-wide theater organizations. In Portland, it is the Portland Area Theater Alliance, or PATA, or they're at portlandtheater.com. In Seattle, it's Theater Puget Sound, TPS. In San Francisco, it's Theater Bay Area, TBA. All of these places have resources, as well as they usually hold like auditions once a year, or they facilitate the introduction of designers to companies, things like that. Specifically for actors, casting sites such as Actors Access, Backstage, Playbill, and Casting Frontier are really great places to look for auditions. Though not really for stage work, this is more for on-camera work, although you can still find some stage projects there. Classes and networking events. Who do you know, right? It's like that example of, I got offered this job this summer because I know Liz. How can you be getting to know as many people in this field, in this industry as possible, and making really positive connections with them? Because I guarantee you that when people are thinking about doing a project, the first thing they're going to think about is, who do I know that would be great for this? Because it's way more convenient to cast somebody or to bring someone on to design your set that you already know, and you already know is great to work with, and you already have a good relationship with. So that means it is your job not only to like take the class and do it, but to do it in a way that like shows how much you're a great person to work with, so that you're making these connections that can yield you work in the future. The other way, and this is predominantly for on-camera work, is via your agent. So in the Portland metro area, agents do not have anything to do with stage work. Really, the only places agents have anything to do with being on stage is in New York, or if you are a Hollywood actor that is making the jump to being on stage. So if you want to be working on camera, it's a really great idea to start trying to get an agent, because that is the only way really you get on camera work. There are a whole handful of agencies, talent management places in Portland. Actors in Action, Q6, Ryan Artists, I'm with Mary Dangerfield. There's one that does with youth more specifically, and the word puddle is in the title, and now I'm not remembering what it is. But there are a ton of these. So if you're like, I want to be working on camera, I want to be doing commercials, I want to be in movies, start doing some research about the agencies that are in Portland and start submitting yourself to agents so they can be getting work for you. I'm going to pause and say that an agent, if they are ever asking you to pay them money, it is a scam. Agents only get paid when you get paid. Agents only get paid when you get paid. Usually the breakdown of the job that you're getting will say something like $1,000 plus 20%. And the 20% means that goes to your agent and you get the $1,000. So I say this because like people get like desperate to get into show business, right? And so then they're like, oh yeah, I'll give you $200 to make me famous. It's not how it works, friends. Don't fall for it. Yes, Miranda, I'm here for you. Okay, what else? How do you get the job? Finding work. What do you need for an audition? We're going to talk about this if you're a designer, but for an audition, generally what you need is a monologue, or 2 or 3 or 7, or an audition piece. Sometimes you will be sent the material that they would like to see you perform in advance. Sometimes not, and you just come in and you perform whatever you've got. Generally, if you're doing something on camera, you will get sent exactly what they want you to perform. Generally, if you're in the theater, you bring a monologue. It's good to be able to do both. You need a headshot and a resume, and that is another rabbit hole that we could go deep, deep down, and we'll touch on that a little bit in a moment. And this is something that I added to this presentation this year specifically. I've done this many years, but this is a new thing. The ability to self-tape, something to record on and with, considering your lighting and your sound and your backdrop. And that is because we are living in this world where gathering in big groups, super not advisable, right? I have done nothing but self-taped commercial auditions in the past year and a half. I have not been called in for a single in-person commercial audition. I have only been asked to tape myself at home. And sometimes I'm like, I don't have the time. I live in a studio apartment. Like this what you are looking at, like this is basically literally all the space I live in. So I have to be really strategic about like, okay, I'm gonna like hang up a sheet. I'm gonna use my little ring lights, which are clearly not on right now, right? I'm gonna have my little lapel mic that I plug into my computer that's gonna record the sound. And because I also live like 405 is right out my window, so it is not quiet. I have to think about all of this. Theaters are also doing more and more and more of asking people to submit an initial audition on tape because it just cuts down on the need to interface with people when it's not super, super safe to do that yet. We are generally less persnickety than people who are asking you for an on-camera audition, right? So like if I did a theater audition and my bed and my cat are in my background, not as big a deal as if I submitted that to my agent who would laugh in my face and tell me to redo it. But my point is that your ability to somehow record yourself is becoming more and more and more important. So when you're thinking about what you need for an audition, that should be a consideration. What do you need for a tech or a design gig? You also need a resume and a portfolio, specifically previous samples of your work. So models or photographs or renderings are super great to look at, not only because it gives people an idea of your final product, but it also gives people an idea of your process. And that can be really crucial. Also having recommendations or checking in with directors that you've worked for before to say, hey, would you mind if I gave your name out as a recommendation to other potential collaborators? Even just checking in, you don't need to be like, could you write me a 2-page glowing recommendation? Not, I mean, that's very nice, but just knowing that you have people, connections who are willing to vouch for your work. So on both of these lists is resume, right? Oh no, I forgot I put this here too. The merits of having a website and a reel, super important, especially when we're doing more things virtually. So this is becoming more and more and more of a thing. A website, really great for technicians and designers because you can have photos of all of the stuff there and people can click through, and usually it's very like visually stimulating and you're like, oh my gosh, this person is a genius, I want to work with them. And all you've done is like send me an email with a URL in it and I've clicked and gotten excited about your work. Amazing. Actors, if again you want to get me excited about your work, have a website that has some pictures of you in shows and has some video clips of you doing commercials. And a reel is a collection of all of your on-camera work cut up into little snippets. It's kind of like your personal highlight reel. And frequently, if you're auditioning for anything on camera, they'll ask you to submit your reel so they can see who you are. That's sort of what stands in for like the monologue that happens in a theatrical process. For on camera, they just want to see your reel. They want to see what you are, what you do, how versatile you are. If you are like, I have not done anything, shoot, don't worry. You can start putting together your reel by getting together with friends and recording yourself and then like editing that together. And software is becoming more and more and more accessible. So like you can actually just do this yourself. When I started my career, you would have to be like, have a friend who has video editing software, knows how to do this or whatever. Now this is pretty simple, right? You can pretty much do it yourself, which is great. So it's really useful. There's not like necessary, but it's real useful to have a website. And if you're a performer, to have some kind of a reel. Someone mentioned voiceover. Have a voiceover reel, right? Snippets of like the best moments of your voice work. Okay, now we're going to go to the next slide, which is about resumes, because that's something that shows up everywhere, right? So on the left, this is an actor resume, and on the right is a costume designer resume. And I just want you to see what these look like, because in any other career situation, when you hear the word resume, there's a really specific format, and there is a very different, yet still specific format when thinking about what you need as a theater artist. So you'll see on both of these, they're in 3 columns. Allison is in 4 columns because she has the year. I don't care about the year. Some people do. I do not. So otherwise, there are 3 columns. The first column, furthest to the left, is the name of the show that you worked on. The second column for Amber is the role that she played in that show. And the third column is the theater company at which she worked. For Allison, that third column is also the theater company. And in the middle column is the director that she worked with. I, on my acting resume, in my third column, have the name of the company and the name of the director. And part of why I do that is, let's say I'm looking at Allison's resume, I can immediately be like, oh, I worked with Maury. Oh, I worked with Liz. I worked with Marcy. I worked with Jessica. I know all of these people that I can just like text and be like, hey, Jessica, I see that you worked with Allison Jones. Or Johnson? Can you tell me a little bit about her work? And already, like, we've got a connection. I'm already interested in Allison because we have mutual connections. You'll notice on both of them, they have their website, right? AmberBogdanovic.com, AllisonJohnson.com, their contact information, right? You'll notice on Amber's, she has her union status. EMC means she's an equity membership candidate, and she's SAG-AFTRA eligible. So that means she's collected enough work, but hasn't decided to join the union, but could if she needed to. And then she's got some personal statistics. Height is sometimes an important thing to note because people want to like pair you up. So you work well with people of either similar or vastly contrasting heights, depending on what they're looking for. Eye color, so they know how she's like reads on camera, and her voice range. I'm looking at the chat. Okay, great. I thought I noticed something new in the chat. I did not. I'm imagining things. Cool. So the other thing that I want to draw your attention to on Amber's is she has regional theater. She spent a while working in New York, so she has a specific section for New York theater, a specific section for film and TV, right? So this is her experience on the actor front. This is where you can put, if you've worked only in educational theater, you can say educational theater, or you could say classwork. And then you could be like, as you like it, Rosalind. This was the name of my teacher at this high school. Great, a great way to show what you have experience doing. Over here, Allison lists all of her experience as costume design, right? She designed all of these shows, and then she assisted on all of these shows. If I'm trying to put together a hybrid resume where I am noting my work as an actor and a director and a designer, I'll do something like this: acting work, blah; directing work, blah; design work, blah. There are very, very unique situations for which I would want that kind of resume, but it's sometimes useful to do. The next thing that both of them have is this sort of training and education piece, right? So here we can see that Allison got her bachelor's from Willamette and was in the Third Rail Mentorship Company. Here we see that Amber went to Indiana University Bloomington and also studied at Otterbein. And she lists specifically the people that she has studied with and the specific types of dance that she is able to do and who taught her which acting styles. This is another place that I look to see if we have anybody in common. Do we share a working language? I have a certification to teach something called Fitzmaurice voice work. And there are a lot of people in the Fitzmaurice community, and I'm going to look and see if you've worked with any of them. Any non-theater related high school classes that would be beneficial. Ooh, that is a really good question. I would say that it depends on what kind of job you're trying to get. So if you're trying to be an actor, a great place for those sort of non-theater related things is at the bottom of this resume where Amber says skills, or sometimes people say special skills, where you can say like I'm a proficient copywriter, or I have experience in poetry, or upper level math, or something like that. So it's not directly related to you as an actor, but it could be a great supplement. So that would be a great place to put that. You'll notice that Amber has the dialects that she is able to use proficiently, sports that she is proficient in, and other valid passport. That's useful if you're getting hired for a gig that's going to ask you to travel, or a show that's going to want to tour internationally. Stage combat, super useful. um there, you can put bizarre things on here. Because people will ask you about them when you audition. I have a friend who on her special skills says cheek William Tell overture, and everyone's like, what is that? And she can play the William Tell overture. It's like da 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 da, right? That one, like on her cheeks. I'm not going to try to do it because it is not my special skill. But it's a great conversation starter that everyone in auditions asks her about. So if you've got like, if you can stand on your head while whistling a song or whatever, like put it on there. You might get asked about it. On the flip side of that, don't put anything on there that you're not actually that great at doing, because people definitely might ask you to do it and expect you to be able to do it well. So there's my tiny bit about resumes. Okay, so now what? We've been talking for quite a while, and I'm about to wrap up and give you a moment to ask questions. But before we're there, let's talk about how we make it all work, how you support yourself so you can get the job, keep the job, get the next job, because it's never just about getting the job. It's about getting the job and then being super great at working with people so that you've got those networking things, those connections, because the next time that person is working, you want them to be like, oh man, Cassie from that show I did last summer, I want her. It's always about what's getting the next job. So we've already talked about that thing that pays you the steady living wage, because generally work as an artist is not steady. It's like, I got paid $2,000 yesterday to do a commercial, and I'm not going to get paid again until 3 months from now when I get maybe the next commercial gig, right? So what is that steady thing that's going to make sure that you are always able to pay rent without being stressed out and having high anxiety all of the time? Because to the self-care thing, that's no way to live. What other skills do you have that you can monetize? Are you a really great graphic designer? Amazing. Do you have a passion for making coffee? Being a barista is usually a really great side gig because the hours are in the morning and then you're done, right? And you have your evenings free. Do you really, really love kids? Can you be a nanny? Amazing, stable job, right? Think about you and what you love doing. Remember what I said earlier, make this something that you love doing so you don't resent it, because you're going to need to love it. What skills do you have that you can monetize? Self-care. Build your own support system and resources. Make sure you have what you need. What do you need in place to take care of your body and your voice if you're a performer? Super useful. Even if you're not a performer, if you're going to be a master electrician, you got to be able to climb up and down ladders carrying heavy stuff all the time. How do you take care of yourself so that you're able to do that? Getting sleep, drinking water, eating healthy, exercise, right? Like, what do you need for you? And this is how it looks for you. This is not how, like, someone on TikTok tells you should set up your diet and your life. Meh. Like, think about yourself, listen to yourself, know your body, and then make smart decisions about you. You're the expert on you. Nobody else is. Mentally, that's part of taking care of yourself mentally, knowing that you are the expert on you. Nobody else is the expert on you. They can give you advice. That's amazing. And you can take that, but you got to filter it through what you know about yourself and what you know you need in order to be okay. If you need to make sure that you have like a lot of free time in the morning, because if you are hit with a bunch of stuff right away, you just like, you get into this like anxiety state, then Build yourself a structure where you have time in the morning to get up and stretch and drink coffee before you have to think about anything frantic. Emotional. Make sure you have friends that you can like vent to, and people who are going to be your cheerleaders, and people who understand what you might be going through, or if they don't understand, they're at least there to empathize and to listen. They want to be there to support you, who will allow you to experience your emotions and will validate your experience no matter what. And lastly, that ongoing training thing, right? That thing where like actors think, okay, I've gotten a degree, I'm done training, I've learned it all. Not true. How can you be continually investing in your product, right? In your skill set, in making yourself continually relevant, in challenging yourself to learn more and more, to grow your skill set, to have new tools in your toolbox. If you're a technician or a designer, staying up on that programming, acquiring the ability to fabricate new things, learning how to work with like wax or iron or whatever, diversifying how much you can do. Because part of that is keeping your brain stimulated, which is like a lot of good, happy chemicals, right? The other part of it is that usually while you're learning new things, you're also making new connections, which is going to help your longevity and your ability to continue doing the work. Okay, so much talking. I just did so much talking. It is now your turn. Do you have any questions about being an artist? Throw them in the chat, shout them out. Oh, I love it. How and why did I choose theater? Ooh, Abby, what a great question. I have always loved storytelling, and I have loved the opportunity to step into another human being's reality and explore what that might be about, and to inspire people through that. And so that is like a self-serving thing that like brings me a lot of joy. And I think that what I had this moment when I was in grad school. It was sort of like an existential crisis, right? I started grad school in 2008 when the economy was crashing and like everyone was out of work. And I was like, shoot, I'm just like, I get to like play pretend all the time. That feels like kind of socially irresponsible. And I had this moment talking with one of my classmates where we were like, there are going to be people who don't have enough to eat, and there are organizations that are trying to help that, and we could totally work for those organizations. But once people have enough to eat, like then what? Like what are they living for? And I would argue that part of what we are living for is to live in a world where we can create beautiful things and connect. And I will go one step further than add that after living through the past year and a half, what has become crystal clear to me is that theater is one of the only places that we have in our society where empathy is created. We specifically go to see a story that is not ours, and we imagine the world through the eyes of those characters for however long that play is. And you cannot help but empathize, right? But see the world through a slightly different lens. And I think that is what our society is missing. So that is my tiny soapbox for you, Abby. So it's a little esoteric, but that's why I am passionate about what I do. I love it personally, and I think it's important for changing the world. Jocelyn, what do I wish I knew about theater before I started my career? That whole chart that I showed you with the like administrative and the artistic, I didn't know that that's how companies looked. When I was in high school and even when I was in college, I kind of knew, but man, I had no idea. I did not know that theaters were nonprofits. I didn't know how nonprofits worked. I wish that I had had a clearer sense of that, because I think knowing your particular, like even if all you want to do is be an actor, all you want to do, it's a huge thing. Even if what you want to do is be an actor, knowing how you fit into this greater system is so useful and gives you so much information about how you choose to navigate your career. I also wish that I had had the awareness that like whatever market you're studying in is you already have a leg up to working in that market, as opposed to doing what I did, moving to where I wanted to be, living Portland, after I had already studied and gone through a whole bunch of training. What does my day-to-day work look like? it is, because I'm an artistic director, it looks very, very different every single day. A lot of my specific work in my administrative position has to do with connecting with other entities and people and groups around our community, doing things like this, planning with my artistic team for the future, connecting with different designers and directors and playwrights to think about future projects, putting processes in place so that those can happen, writing grants, running committee meetings. Like, it is all over the map. In terms of when I was like bartending and acting, I would get up, I would see if there were any auditions that I wanted to be doing. I would like work out. I still do that every day, but like, you know what I mean? Like, but it was very much more centric on like the amount of time that I was not bartending. I was like trying to think about what jobs are out there, what can I be doing today to take care of myself and my skill set and bettering that. And sometimes it's taking a class, and sometimes it's like reading a book, and sometimes it's watching Sandra Oh's new show on Netflix because she's brilliant and I want to see what she's doing, you know? So like, it comes in all different parts. Hank asks if there's a lot of downtime between shows or are constantly working on something. That is totally dependent on the individual actor. So some people are really good at just getting gig after gig after gig, or some people have that for like a year and then it's like nothing. And that's part of why I say have that survival job, because there's no guarantee and it's kind of fickle and it's very hard to determine. Like, there are so many reasons for you to not get cast in a show that have literally nothing to do with you, nothing to do with anything that you can control. And so thinking about what you can control and what you can keep regular is really useful. There have been years when I have worked like month to month to month to month with very little break. And it's kind of exhausting, but it's also exhilarating. And then there have been, I mean, like nobody, right, has been doing much consistent theater work over the past year and a half. So it is constantly in flux. What exact requirements do you need to join a union? You need to collect a certain number of weeks working under a specific type of contract, either equity or SAG-AFTRA. And then you need to pay dues, and then you need to maintain a certain number of weeks that you are working under those types of contracts in your future work. It's very complicated. And if you send me an email because you want more information, I am happy to give you more information, but that's the basics. The process of finding an agent starts with research, starts with you seeing who's in your area, looking at what kind of other talent they represent. Do they represent people who are like you or not like you? Do they seem like they already have a bunch of you, or like they kind of have your type, but they don't have you? Do they talk about how they work? Do you jive with the language they're using? And then you submit yourself, right? You say, hey, you write them an email, I'm looking for an agent. I'm wondering if I can come in and audition for you. Or you're like, hey, here's my reel, or here's my website. I'm looking for representation, wondering if you'd be open to having a conversation. And that's where you start. How long does it take from concept to play? So this can be years, or this can be like months. Usually years is better. So I'll give you an example. We're going to be doing a brand new play next September called Our Utopia. And I started working on this idea for this project like this past spring. So I'm gonna have to do math now, which is not sometimes my strong suit, but like a year and a half is from initial idea. Actually, it's good from the time I started talking with the playwright about this, like 2 years, right? And they've been working on this, and I just saw a first draft of this script, and we're gonna workshop it, and then we're gonna workshop it some more, and then finally we're gonna rehearse and perform it in August and September of next year. If we're doing a script that already exists, that we're not creating from scratch, it's basically like you have to choose a script, and then you have to apply for performance rights. So you have to make sure that, like, you know, this is so that Bag and Baggage and Heart Theater aren't doing the same show at the same time, because that would just be silly, right? We're like 3 blocks away from each other, and that makes no sense. So you have to apply for rights, and usually you want to be doing that several months in advance. But then from the moment that we start creating the design, it's like 12 weeks. And from the moment the actors are in the room, that's like a month. and then we put it up and then we go. Some places work with a shorter process, some with a longer, but that's kind of it. We offer internships for high school students. We hire at least one high school student as the backstage crew person on every show. So if you go to our website, which is bagandbaggage.org, oh here, this is my last slide, so we'll go there. This is my email address. Reach out to me if you have more questions. You can also just go to the last part of that email address, bagandbaggage.org, and there is a link that you can find to submit yourself for an internship as a high school student. And we're going to be going back into the theater, oh my God, in 2022. So we will be hiring high school interns. How difficult was it to break into the industry? How did I find local auditions? Okay. So I'm going to answer the second question first. PDX Backstage is my favorite way to find auditions. So I will put this in the chat so you can see it. Google this and sign up. That is just a great resource. Also, those Facebook groups that I mentioned, looking for Portland actors on Facebook. That is the best way to find local auditions, or to just like see what the buzz is about in the industry. How difficult was it to break into the industry? This is a thing that, like, my experience is my experience, and anyone else you ask is going to have a totally different experience, which is why I say there is no one right way to have a theater career. So for me, I had the great fortune of, when I was in undergrad, I was part of this like semi-professional, semi-community theater. And I don't even know how I had the fortune of being part of the team that like started running this place, but I like sort of fell into this. So that was an incredible way to build my resume. And then I got into grad school, which I was able to do on the first try, which is not something that everyone is able to do, but something that a bunch of people are able to do. So I wasn't like super unique, but sometimes it takes some time. And then I went to grad school, and then I moved to Portland after a couple of years. And I was really lucky in that Bag and Baggage was the second audition I did when I moved here. And they liked me. They liked working with me, so they hired me again. And then they hired me again. And then they gave me one small administrative job. And then they gave me another. And so my career is sort of like snowballed in a very in a very unexpected way. So I'm aware that I've had it easier than most. But there are also people like me who had to work really hard, but also didn't have to work for years and years and years to break in. And then there's like my friend Ian, who worked all over the place as an actor in Portland, but really wanted to work on camera. So he moved to LA 6 years ago, and he is still trying to break in. And it's not because he's a bad actor. He's a fantastic actor. But circumstances are, outside of your control. And what do you do? Okay, great. I'm going to stop screen sharing because I think you've seen me in a tiny box long enough. And I know we have like 1 minute left. And yes, I will share slides too, if you would just like to be able to access the slides. Yeah, any other questions or final words? I am serious about, like, feel free to be in touch with me. Send me an email. Always happy to respond or to give you additional advice. I would not be where I am if people had not given me advice along the way. And I think it's an important part of like building that community and paying it forward. So please do not hesitate to reach out. There's not a show right now. We're hosting a couple holiday things that are not Bag and Baggage, but they're friends of ours in the Vault. So the Vault Theater is our theater in downtown Hillsborough. This Saturday, we're hosting a company called Fake Radio, and they do recreations of old time radio broadcasts, and you can like see them happening live, which is really cool. That is sold out, so you cannot come to it, I'm sorry. But then on December 17th, 18th, and 19th, we're hosting these two incredible musicians named David Saffert and Courtney Freed, and they are doing a brand new holiday cabaret show called Silver and Gold. So that has tickets for it still, and you can totally go to that. And we will be back in the theater with a full production for the first time since 2020 in April with this play called Svetlana that is about the theater and also about Joseph Stalin's only daughter who had this crazy, amazing, colorful life. So it's a cool play. And that play, Our Utopia, that I mentioned, we will be doing a workshop production. So no costumes, no set, but just like getting it ready in development. We'll be doing that at the end of January. So that's sort of what's coming up in Bag and Baggage world. And I think I'm out of time. So I want to thank you all for your time and focus and for giving this kind of attention to your future and your career. And thank you to the Chamber for letting me talk to you today.
Thank you so much. We learned a lot, and hopefully these kids will be able to, be in the theater or it's just in the backstage even.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Best of luck to all of you. And I look forward to seeing where this takes you and what you do with your careers. And again, if I can be helpful along the way, let me know.
All right.